Today, I'm hanging out at a local gun shop, one of those places where the vibe is all about community, firearms, and good conversation. Trust me, there's no better spot to unpack the latest in gun policy than right here, surrounded by folks who live and breathe this stuff. So, let's get to it. I was chatting with some of the crew here when I stumbled across a game changer, a new Department of Justice policy, fresh from May 23rd, 2025, that says if you've got a concealed carry permit in certain states, you might not need to run a NICS background check to buy a gun. I'm not kidding. This one hit me like a plot twist in a blockbuster movie. I thought I had gun laws all figured out. But this? It's like discovering your go-to shooting range just added a laser tag arena. Totally unexpected. Now, don't get the wrong idea. This isn't some open-door policy for buying firearms. We're talking about 13 specific states, a pile of paperwork, and some big questions about what this means for gun shops and buyers like us. There's potential for streamlining things, sure, but also some risks that make me a bit uneasy, especially when you think about how this could play out in the real world. So, stick with me as we break this down step by step. We'll cover what's happening, why it's a big deal, and why I'm already wondering how gun shops are supposed to navigate this without a crystal ball. Let's dive in. This is going to be one wild ride. All right, before we get into the details, let's make sure we're all clear on what NICS and CCW actually mean. It'll make this whole thing a lot easier to follow. Kicking off with the foundation of this policy, I'm unpacking the National Instant Criminal Background Check System, or NICS, which is like the gatekeeper for gun purchases in the U.S. born from the Brady Handgun Violence Prevention Act of 1993. NICS is an FBI-run database designed to stop firearms from landing in the hands of folks who shouldn't have them, think felons, fugitives, or those with certain mental health issues. When you buy a gun at a licensed dealer, you fill out ATF Form 4473, a multi-page beast. I like to call the gun shop's version of a library checkout slip. The dealer punches your info into NICS, and in minutes, they get a proceed, deny, or delay response. Since starting in 1998, NICS has handled over 500 million checks, rejecting about 2 million sales. It's not about tracking guns, contrary to some conspiracy theories. It's about keeping things safe. Fun fact, NICS gets slammed every Black Friday with millions of checks because, apparently, guns are as popular as discounted TVs during holiday sales. Switching focus to concealed carry weapon permits, or CCWs, which are the VIP passes in this new policy. A CCW is a license from your state that lets you carry a hidden handgun, maybe under your coat or in your glove box, without raising eyebrows. Getting one is no walk in the park. States typically demand a background check, often through NICS plus fingerprints, to ensure you're not mistaken for someone with the same name who's got a criminal record. Many require training like a day at the range, learning how to handle a firearm safely and navigate local laws. CCWs differ across states, some last 5 years, others less, and not all states honor each other's permits, which can make cross-state travel a headache. This policy only counts CCWs issued by the state where you're buying the gun. So no sneaking in with an out-of-state permit. It's a rigorous process, which is why the ATF trusts these permits enough to skip extra checks. Bridging NICS and CCW shows why this exemption makes sense, at least on paper. The background check for a CCW is usually as strict as the one NICS runs when you buy a gun, sometimes even tougher with those fingerprints and training requirements. States issuing CCWs already screen for criminal records, mental health flags, or other deal breakers NICS would catch. The ATF's logic is simple. If you've got a valid CCW, you've already passed a serious vetting. So why run the same test again? It's like getting a backstage pass after a full security check. No need to pat you down twice. But here's the rub. CCWs can be valid for up to 5 years, and a lot can change in that time, which we'll dig into later. For now, understanding that CCW checks mirror NICS sets up why 13 states are rolling with this exemption. Oh, and here's another tidbit. Some states even check your social media for red flags when you apply for a CCW. Talk about Big Brother watching your range selfies. The overlap between these systems is what makes this policy tick, but it's not without its quirks, especially when you consider how fast someone's status can change. All right, I'm diving headfirst into the meat of this thing, the shiny new Department of Justice policy that's got everyone in the gun world buzzing. According to an open letter from the ATF, dropped on May 23, 2025, folks with a valid concealed carry permit in certain states can now skip the NICS background check when buying a firearm. I know. It sounds like someone just handed out a get-out-of-jail-free card, but hold your horses. It's not that simple. This policy is a big deal, and it's shaking things up in 13 states and territories. I'm breaking it down so you know exactly what's going on and why it's got my head spinning. First up, the states and territories on this list: Alabama, California, but only for their rare entertainment firearms permits, which, yeah, blew my mind too. Georgia, Indiana, Kentucky, Louisiana, Michigan, Missouri, Montana, Puerto Rico, Utah, West Virginia, and Wisconsin. If you've got a CCW from one of these places, issued within the last 5 years, and you're a resident of that state, you can walk into a gun shop, flash that permit, and potentially bypass the NICS check. Missouri's a new kid on this block, while places like Kansas have been doing this for years. I checked the ATF's Brady permit chart, and it's crystal clear. These states' permits meet federal standards to act as a NICS substitute. Now, before you start thinking this is a free-for-all, there are some hard rules. The CCW has to be issued by the state where you're buying the gun, no showing up in Missouri with a shiny Utah permit and expecting a pass. I've seen folks try that, waving out-of-state permits like they're golden tickets, and it's a hard no. The permit also can't be one of those lifetime deals some states offer. It's got to be fresh renewed or issued within 5 years. The ATF's logic is that your CCW background check already vetted you, so they're not reinventing the wheel. It's like getting a fast pass at an amusement park because you already went through security. But, man, 5 years is a long time for that pass to stay valid. This exemption comes from the Brady Handgun Violence Prevention Act, which allows states with rigorous CCW processes to opt out of NICS checks at the point of sale. The ATF's letter updates the list of qualifying states. And it's not just a random choice. These states have permitting systems that mirror or exceed NICS requirements, like fingerprinting and criminal history checks. For example, Indiana's license to carry handgun qualifies because it's tied to a thorough vetting process, as noted in recent ATF guidance. But here's where I raise an eyebrow. California on this list, the state with some of the tightest gun laws in the country? Turns out, their entertainment permits used by folks like stunt coordinators are so strictly controlled they count. It's like finding a vegan at a butcher shop totally unexpected. The policy's supposed to streamline things for law-abiding gun buyers, saving time at the counter. I get it. Nobody loves filling out Form 4473 and waiting for the NICS call to clear. But the flip side is what's got me antsy. If your CCW's good for 5 years, what happens if you pick up a felony or a bench warrant for unpaid parking tickets in year 2? You're still walking around with a valid permit, and a gun shop might not know you're now a no-go. The ATF's 3-page letter doesn't spell out how dealers are supposed to handle that, and it's got folks like me wondering if this is a recipe for trouble. Some states, like Kansas, have been navigating this for a while, but for newcomers like Missouri, it's uncharted territory. I'm not saying this policy's a disaster waiting to happen, but it's like handing someone a map with half the roads missing. Gun shops still have to verify the permit's legit, checking the issuing state, permit number, and expiration date, and buyers still fill out Form 4473. It's not like you just flash your CCW and walk out with an AR-15. But the lack of real-time NICS checks? That's where my spidey senses start tingling. I'm curious to see how this plays out, especially in states like Missouri, where it's brand new as of May 2025. For now, you can dig into the details yourself on the ATF's Brady permit chart. It's all there in black and white. This policy's a big shift, and it's got me both intrigued and a bit nervous about what's coming next. I'm switching gears now to the part that's got me scratching my head and feeling a bit uneasy: the risks and concerns tied to this new DOJ policy. Don't get me wrong, I see the appeal of streamlining gun buys for folks with a valid CCW, but there's a flip side that's giving me some serious pause. This exemption, allowing CCW holders in 13 states to skip NICS checks, sounds slick on paper, but it's like handing a gun shop a puzzle with half the pieces missing. I'm digging into why this could be a headache for dealers and a potential public safety issue. And trust me, it's not all sunshine and roses. The biggest red flag is the 5-year validity of most CCWs. You get your permit, pass a rigorous background check with fingerprints and all, and you're good to go awesome. But what happens if, say, 2 years later, you pick up a felony? Or maybe you skip paying a stack of parking tickets and end up with a bench warrant. Suddenly, you're a fugitive from justice, which is a big no-no on Form 4473's Question 21E. That CCW card in your wallet? Still valid, still shiny, and still enough to walk into a gun shop and buy a firearm without a NICS check. I'm picturing a guy with a warrant, strolling in with a grin and a permit, and the dealer has no clue he's trouble. 5 years is a lifetime for things to go sideways, and there's no daily memo from the ATF saying, hey, this guy's permit is no good anymore. For gun shops, those federal firearms licensees, or FFLs, this is where the sweat starts forming. If a dealer sells a gun to someone with a valid CCW, skips the NICS check, and that buyer later uses the gun in a crime, guess who's in the hot seat? The FFL could face a world of hurt, think ATF audits, fines, or even losing their license, which is basically the end of their business. I've talked to dealers who say this feels like walking a tightrope without a net. The ATF's May 23, 2025 letter, all 3 pages of it just lists the states and says, go for it, with zero guidance on how to handle these risks. It's like getting a text from your boss saying, figure it out, and then they go radio silent. Not exactly reassuring. Another wrinkle is the honesty factor or lack thereof. Form 4473 still has to be filled out, and buyers answer questions about their legal status, like whether they're a fugitive or have a felony. But let's be real. Someone who's gone rogue isn't going to check yes on Question 21E and admit they're a fugitive because of unpaid traffic tickets. I've seen how some folks breeze through paperwork, treating it like a multiple-choice quiz they already know the answers to. Dealers can't read minds. And without a NICS check, they're relying on that CCW and the buyer's word. If the buyer lies, the FFL could still take the fall if things go south. Some states, like Kansas, have been doing this exemption thing for years, and they've got a bit of a playbook. I found posts on X from Kansas FFLs saying they sometimes run NICS checks anyway to cover their backsides, even if the law doesn't require it. But for newbies like Missouri, this is uncharted territory, and not every shop's going to take that extra step. The ATF's Brady permit chart spells out which permits qualify, but it doesn't tell dealers how to spot a bad apple when the permit looks legit. Recent ATF data shows about 1% of NICS checks get denied annually, often for reasons like warrants or restraining orders, stuff that could slip through with a 5-year-old CCW. I'm not saying this policy's a ticking time bomb, but it's got enough gaps to make me nervous. Dealers are stuck between wanting to follow the law and not wanting to get burned if a sale goes wrong. Without real-time updates on permit statuses or clearer ATF rules, FFLs are rolling the dice. I'm hoping to get some answers at a NICS conference soon, because right now, this feels like a high-stakes game with no rulebook. For now, gun shops are left wondering if trusting a CCW is a smart bet or a one-way ticket to trouble. This whole setup's got me curious, and a little worried about how it'll play out in the real world. I'm wrapping my head around how this new DOJ policy actually plays out in gun shops, because it's not like you just flash a CCW and walk out with a rifle. The nuts and bolts of implementation are where things get practical, and I'm breaking down what dealers and buyers can expect now that 13 states are waiving off NICS checks for valid CCW holders. It's a mix of paperwork, trust, and a whole lot of hoping nobody's gaming the system. So bear with me as I lay it out. Even with this exemption, buyers still have to tackle ATF Form 4473, that library card for guns I keep mentioning. You fill out your personal info, answer questions about your legal status, and the dealer logs details like the firearm's serial number. If you're using a CCW to skip the NICS check, the dealer writes down the permit's issuing state, number, issue date, and expiration date, usually in Question 29. No call to the FBI's NICS hotline, just a quick check that your permit's legit and matches your ID. Those forms, FFLs keep them forever or until they close shop, when they're shipped to the ATF's out-of-business records center, A massive warehouse that sounds like it's straight out of an Indiana Jones flick, stuffed with boxes of yellowing paperwork. For dealers, this is where the rubber meets the road. Some might lean hard into the exemption to speed up sales, especially in states like Kansas where it's old hat. Others, especially in newbies like Missouri, might play it safe and run NICS checks anyway, because nobody wants to lose their license over a bad call. I'm heading to a NICS conference next week, an 8-hour crash course for FFLs, and I'm itching to ask how dealers are supposed to protect themselves if a buyer's CCW hides a shady past. The ATF's Brady permit chart, which you can find on their website, lists exactly which permits qualify state by state, and it's a solid starting point for anyone curious. I'm betting this policy will shake out differently across states, some shops embracing it, others sticking to the old NICS routine to cover their backs. For now, I'm keeping my eyes peeled for how this unfolds, and I'll share what I learned from the conference. It's a wild time to be in the gun world, and I'm as curious as you are about what's around the corner. I'm wrapping up this deep dive into the new DOJ policy, and holy smokes, it's been a roller coaster of info. Bottom line, if you've got a valid CCW in one of 13 states, you can skip the NICS check when buying a gun. But don't think it's a hall pass to skip the rules. You're still slogging through Form 4473, and dealers are eyeballing your permit like it's a winning lottery ticket. This is the hiccup that 5-year CCW window and the ATF's vague guidance leave gun shops in a pickle, and I'm side-eyeing the risks like nobody's business. Staying on top of gun laws is non-negotiable for responsible owners, so I'm nudging you to keep tabs on your state's regulations. Drop a comment below. Tell me if this policy feels like a slick move or a risky bet. Subscribe and hit that bell icon to catch my next video, where I'll dive into updates on how this shakes out. I'm hot on the trail for more answers, and I want you along for the ride. Thanks for sticking with me. This gun world keeps throwing curveballs, and I'm already itching to crack the next one.